Hey guys, it's me, Lydia. I am here at home in my bedroom at my home office, and I was just about to sit down and work on digitizing some of my artwork, and I thought, what better time than the present to make a little tutorial for you. Had at least one request for a tutorial on how I digitize my art, and so I thought I'd just take you through the process. I have a couple of different art pieces to work on today, and it will demonstrate a good variety of the things that I do. To start, I already scanned this artwork. It's already in my computer. I have a Canon Lida. I don't know which one I have. A Canon Lida 400, Lide. I don't know if it's Lida. I always say Lida, but it's a Canon Lide 400 scanner. The scanner that's attached to your printer will work just fine. You just want to make sure that you are scanning your artwork at 300 dpi. DPI stands for dots per inch. It's a measure of resolution, and 300 is standard. So if you scan it at 300, it's going to be to scale. So it will be the same size resolution wise in your computer as it was like on the paper. I personally choose to scan my artwork at 600 dpi. This is a bigger file, it takes up more space, but it allows me to scale my artwork up without losing any of the quality. So that is a really cool thing that you can do. That's my first special tip for you. My Canon scanner costs $115, and I've had it for 4 years. So I think it was a good investment. It's definitely a must-have. I know there are some artists who use the scan feature on their phones, but I've typically only seen artists use that for lettering, which makes a little more sense because you usually take lettering into Illustrator to clean it up, and then it's not such a big deal if it's not perfectly clean. But you want to have a really clean, clear image. Just to add on to that, this seems like a no-brainer, but you want to make sure that your artwork is completely clean of any pencil shavings, eraser shavings, dust, fuzz, because they are going to get captured in the scan and they can be a pain to edit out later. So that's my scanning workflow. Just save the artwork to a folder where it will be easily found. I think a folder with a date is really great because it helps you keep track of where it's at. I'm going to switch to a screen recording now and just take you through this process. And one more note, this is a Photoshop tutorial, so unfortunately if you're not a Photoshop user, this will not be useful to you. I have always been a Photoshop user, and so I unfortunately don't have any other recommendations. Adobe is industry standard, and I think it's a good investment to make if you're really serious about digitizing your art to sell. So my recommendation would be to consider it a business expense. So I'm here in Photoshop and I'm going to go to File and then Open, and I'm going to pick the files that I want to use for this tutorial. I need to rotate these so that they're oriented properly. So I'm going to go to Image Rotation, and rotate them as needed. This one is going the other direction. And I don't know if you can tell from this, but my scanner tends to scan things with a little bit of desaturation and it leaves it a little bit pink. Like it brings out a lot of red in the image. So I'm going to correct that, but not right now. What I'm going to do to start is I'm going to use the selection tool that's right here, and I am just going to start selecting these. Sometimes if the scanning has really blown out an image, or if it's made it really light and it's not very well distinguished from the background, I will edit the colors first. But in this case, this is like a pretty simple piece of art to select. All of these are very like distinctive shapes, and the colors are pretty distinctive from the background as well. That's partly why I chose this one to use for this tutorial. I'm also going to individually select each of these. So as you can see, I've already selected this. If you want to deselect, you can either click this to subtract from the selection, or you can hold down the Option button, and that will
that will allow you to subtract without having to constantly switch back and forth between these two. You can adjust the size here. I'm using something sort of small because this is a small piece of art. And then you can either go down here to the layer masks and you can clip this out from the background like that so that it's isolated. But I still want to use this background, so I'm going to actually copy. So you can go up here and hit copy. You can see the keyboard shortcut is Command C, and I find the keyboard shortcuts are like so helpful when you're using Photoshop. They really speed up the process and streamline things. So I'm going to hit Command C and copy this. Then I'm going to hit Command V to paste. And as you can see, we now have a new layer that is just that one little selection of the sugar packet. We also have the option to use, I'm going to select the background before I do this, to use this new kind of like AI generated, maybe AI powered. I think it's AI powered because they didn't used to have it. They have this newer auto select subject option here. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't work so well. As you can see here, it's just kind of selected the whole background, but if I were to crop this, it might work better. So let's try it again. And as you can see, it's done a little bit of a better job, but it's still not great. And also, it's not selecting the areas that I want to select, so I'm not going to use that. To deselect, I'm going to push Command D, and that will deselect everything. I'm going to go back to the selection tool, and I'm going to just work on selecting the rest of these. To zoom, you hold down Option and scroll in and out, up and down with 2 fingers on the keypad, the trackpad if you're using Mac. Unfortunately, I do not know all of these shortcuts off the top of my head for Windows, so you will have to refer to the file panel for those details. Now that I have all of these selected and individual, like I will just hide the back here. Oh, I missed this one. Hang on. Real quick. Let me select this. Alright, there we go. Now when I had the background, we just have all of our cute little sugar packets selected. I'm going to move this one over. I painted it a few times trying to get it to how I wanted it. And now that I have selected these all individually, I can play with the arrangement, I can play with the scale, and I can really fine-tune this this group of little paintings to be what I want. And I find that helpful because sometimes you paint something on paper and then you look at it in the computer, and scanning it and bringing it into Photoshop to digitize it just brings out all of the little errors and inconsistencies in a really special way. So like here you can see this one looks kind of crooked. One way you can fix that is you can just hold down Command and drag to adjust the shear, but you can also use the free transform tool, and that will allow you to kind of play with the shape of it. a little bit more, in a little bit more detail. So I'm just going to straighten that one out. I'm going to straighten this one out a little bit. Now, you don't want them to be absolutely perfect because there is something charming to an organic imperfection, but you also sometimes you just don't want things to look crooked. So it's totally okay to edit your artwork to fine tune it in this way. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. And now that I have kind of fixed these all up to my liking, I'm going to adjust the colors. So you can either adjust the colors directly within a layer. So if I select this layer and then go up here to layer or image and adjustments, you have all of these options for editing the colors and the hues and the shadows, etc. But if you do that, it's kind of locked in. So if I go to the levels and I bring down the levels a little bit and then I brighten them up a little bit, and then I want to do something else. Say I want to change the color balance and I want to make it a little less red. Now I can't go back and change the levels without undoing the color balance. So to avoid that issue, what you can do is you can make a new adjustments layer. So I'm going to make a levels layer here. I'm just going to adjust this slightly. The levels panel, you can adjust the brightness, the darkness of the shadows. Down here you can play with the exposure. That will brighten things or lighten things, and this will darken them. And this particular panel is super helpful in achieving a more like photorealistic version of what you started with. My end goal is to bring this back to looking as similar as it did on paper. And like I said, when you scan things, the color gets a little bit changed. It loses a little bit of saturation and brightness. So I'm just playing with these colors in order to fix that. I'm going to turn my screen brightness up a bit. On the whole, though, these are looking pretty good, so I don't want to change them too much. I'm just going to, like I said, in the levels, I'm going to bring it down a little bit to like 0.9 and up a little bit to 0.25. I'm going to just repeat that individually with each of these, and then as you can see, this is actually editing every layer because I'm working on the top layer right now. So if I just want to apply this to a singular layer, I will click Option Command G, and that will create a clipping mask that applies it only to the layer that's immediately underneath it. So if I dragged it to here, it would switch to this layer here. But I think I actually want to keep this applied to all of them because they all need a little bit of the same brightening and lightening. However, I am going to create a little adjustment layer for some of these specifically. So this one, the colors are just looking a little bit dull. So I'm going to go over here to adjustments and I'm going to make a hue and saturation adjustment layer. And I'm going to bring up the saturation some to just bring out the brilliance and the pink and the red that I'm not seeing here. It's looking kind of muddy otherwise, before, after. And then I am going to clip this down so it's only applied to this layer. I'm also going to play with the adjustments in here. I'm going to play with the curves because I want this text to be darker and I want some of these little shadows that you can kind of barely see to come out a little bit more. Okay, and I think I have adjusted these all to the specifications that I want. So now I'm going to make an art print out of this. I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to make an 8x10 at 300 dpi. If you make it more than that, it will actually be bigger than 8x10 inches. And then I'm going to, you can either drag and select all of them that way, but you can see these adjustment layers are not going to be included in that. So I'm actually just going to click, hold down Shift, and then select all of the ones I want. Copy them by hitting Command C, and then coming over here and clicking Command V to paste. And as you can see, because I scanned these at 600 dpi, they are much larger than they were in real life. And that would allow me to make something as big as like an 11x14 print out of something that was originally like roughly 8x5 inches. And I think that's just a really great hack for when you're digitizing art. I'm going to give these a little bit more adjustment. And then I want to make sure that the gap on the top, which is like 7/8 inch, is not bigger than the gap on the bottom. That it just is more pleasing to the eye visually if the gap on the bottom is slightly larger. And I'm going to add a signature. So I keep a scanned signature just for use on all of my dropshipped art prints since I don't have the opportunity to add it myself. Just copy and paste it, and then drag it down to the corner and resize as needed. And there you have an art print. For the second piece of art, I'm actually not going to take you through the whole process again. I will try to demonstrate this selection tool, this auto select tool, really quick. And before I do that, if I want to select something like this that has a lot of light colors and little details, it does help sometimes to edit the colors first. So I'm going to make an adjustments layer to deepen the hues and lighten some of the unwanted shadows, but I don't want to overdo it. And this will just raise the contrast enough to help the selection be a little bit easier. I cropped that very close, didn't I? Well, okay, it's still fine. And the colors are bothering me, so I'm going to go ahead and change them too. I'm going to make this a little less pink, a little less red. And you can see the colors are just more true. And now if I want to try this selection, you can see it does a fairly good job of selecting out some of these details. And I would select this all in one piece and then just do the same thing before where I copied and pasted. And then maybe I would select some individual areas like this to selectively brighten or increase the saturation or adjust the hue of. But this tutorial is already getting a bit long, and the methods I used for the sugar packets are exactly the same that I would use for this, except maybe in a slightly different order. And that is how I digitize pretty much all of my art. It is now a completely different day. I'm in a different outfit. It's a different hour of the day because I got called away in the middle of recording that tutorial and I didn't get a chance to finish it and film an outro the same night. So, surprise. That is how I digitize pretty much all of my artwork. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any alternative methods that I use. I've also been using this pretty much ever since I started using Photoshop. If you're curious about what tools I use to make art, I've already made a vlog about that. I'll link it up here. I'll also put it in the cards at the end.
And if there's any other tutorials that you're interested in seeing from me, just leave a comment and maybe I'll make that in the future. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.